Quentin Tarantino is easily in my top 5 favorite directors of all time, so safe to say I was pretty damn stoked for my first Quentin Tarantino movie in a theater, and let me tell you, it doesn't disappoint. This film is the best shit that QT has turned out in the past decade, and it proved after the absolute abomination of Hateful Eight that he has still got it. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is about Rick Dolan, a lost TV cowboy completely losing his power in Hollywood, making one last-ditch effort to save his career. And let me tell you, Rick Dolan has skyrocketed into my top 3 Quentin Tarantino protagonists, simply because this is unlike anything Quentin Tarantino has ever done before with a protagonist. Most of his protagonists are badass in at least one way or another, and Rick Dalton is just simply the most pathetic, total loser dork character Tarantino has ever made. And that's not at all an insult. In fact, it's the furthest thing from it. It's a glowing compliment to Tarantino. He made him a stutterer. He made him a drunk idiot. He made him a crier. He made him a character who makes all of his decisions based on his insecurity in one way or another. His imperfections so perfectly highlight the imperfections of people in the 2010s and the recognition of those flaws. And he, even though that this is a character back in '69, he feels like a character fit for us today. And of course, he's played by Leonardo freaking DiCaprio. This is a man who every single time he walks into the room is the coolest person there. And here, he is the most pathetic person in every single room he's in, even when he's in a room with an 8-year-old girl. You just gotta praise DiCaprio for this performance. He's masterful here, and he really gets to show his comedic chops off, but he crafts something completely different than Wolf of Wall Street here. He's not over the top in any way at all. He lets Tarantino's words take him on a journey, and his performance here is understated and still hilarious. This is probably the funniest Tarantino movie out of them all, and that's saying something considering he has made a lot of funny movies. No, it doesn't have the perfect subtext of all these other Tarantino films. In fact, it's a pretty straightforward script, but it is just so funny, and of course a lot of that comes from the other half of the casting duo of the decade. It comes from Brad Pitt's Cliff Booth. While I definitely like Rick more, Cliff is a perfect Tarantino character. He fits more into a Tarantino film. He's entertaining every single second he's on screen. He's hilarious, he's badass, and yet still saying that he's a Tarantino character doesn't feel like a proper description for him, because he's so much more warm, so much more friendly than all of Quentin Tarantino's other characters, and a lot of that stems from his relationship with Rick. Cliff isn't just another cool guy, no. He is really friendly. He really cares about his friend Cliff. He is driving him around. He loves his buddy and will stop at nothing to help him feel more secure with his job. Brad Pitt is, of course, awesome, and the chemistry that him and DiCaprio have here is simply out of this world, and you can tell that they and Quentin Tarantino spend a lot of time developing this relationship. This is definitely one of the best movie friendships of the decade because it's just so authentic. When you have a close friend, you don't have these big emotional outbursts saying how much you care for each other and how much you mean to them and you start hugging each other. That's just not how it goes. There's just a steady flow of stuff. You're hanging around, you're cracking jokes, you're talking about stuff that doesn't really matter, and that's really what happens in this film. One of the greatest scenes in the film is just them talking about a TV show, and that's why you can have scenes like that, because they spend so much time on the chemistry here. They understood how friends work, and that's why you can have such masterful scenes like that one. Their conversations are just so authentic from beginning to end here, and I'm so glad that they're a duo in this film because it just did not disappoint. And of course, the other big actor here was Margot Robbie. And while I can't personally say that, she captured Sharon Tate because I wasn't alive, I haven't studied her at all, so I couldn't know if she actually captured her. But I can say that she certainly captured the essence of the 60s, that innocence, that love before her gruesome, horrific murder. Her murder marked the end of an era, and that is much of what this film is based on. It's about ends of eras, it's about glory days, it's about accepting them, it's about trying to deal with the sadness that comes when those good days end, and it's on a very small and large scale. On the small scale, you have Rick Dalton desperately trying to fight his end of an era. He's trying to make sure that he can prolong his relevance in Hollywood. And as the date grows nearer to Sharon Tate's murder, we feel as though that the 60s themselves, they're trying to hang on to its last glory days, the last days of fun and carefree and innocence before we have the brutal dark days of the 70s. The parallels between those two stories strengthen this film thematically so much, and it makes Sharon Tate's inclusion absolutely necessary. And I am just a sucker for these stories about end of an era and glory days and living out glory days again. And so that just made me love the film even more, but I think it was really well executed. Of course, this wouldn't work if we didn't think that the 60s was the most wonderful time ever, and Quentin Tarantino makes us think that. The 60s in this film, the production design is out of this world. The 60s, the decade itself, is a character. It's a living, breathing part of this film. Every single shot is perfectly made to make you feel like the 60s was magic. Truly magic. If at night it was vibrantly colored, everyone was partying and dancing. During the day, no one's driving, there's no traffic, it's beautiful out, it's sunny. Everything about this film makes you want to live in that decade. And it's not just the large big picture here, it's also about the small stuff. There's so much meticulous detail in the background, it's insane. Almost every single shot had something that I wanted to look up, wanted to learn more about. I don't think there's been a film that has ever inspired me more to learn about a decade as much as this one. So much great stuff here. You have phenomenal performances. It's a great Tarantino script. The set design is amazing. The characters are super fun, super different from what we've seen from Quentin Tarantino. The themes are fantastic. So, what are the flaws of this film? And well, you may have heard this from other reviewers, but well, it gets a little slow. And not just Quentin Tarantino slow, like really slow. It's really just the middle part of this film. One storyline revolves around Brad Pitt. He picks up this Manson girl, they go to the ranch. And well, at the ranch, it takes a long time for Brad Pitt to get where he's going. He wants to see this guy, see if the hippies are taking advantage of him. And a lot of it is good tension building, but it just goes on for so long, and it doesn't feel like there's enough tension per capita, I guess you could say, that makes it worth it. The scene goes on for too long to have tension every single second, and it just feels too long at the end, even in the theater while I was just watching it, so I probably will not be seeing that scene ever again. But what's worse is all these cowboy scenes. These are just so bad. I know that Quentin Tarantino is trying to push for like the next frontier film. I know the man's trying to innovate, and I respect it, but this is not the way to go. What we have here, we had two scenes, not one, but two, where Rick is acting in a TV show. And it's just the TV show. It's not like we're seeing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood anymore. It's like we're seeing the TV show. And that's a cool premise, but it doesn't work. And I get that it's important to Rick's character. I get that we see him fall and rise, but that's not the point. The point is that we have these completely different stories that really have nothing to do with Rick's arc, with anything to do with the entire story as a whole. So why are we focusing on them? Just get to the point, make the scenes quicker. We don't have to drag them out for so long. It's like Quentin Tarantino was trying to make some cheesy 50s Western while also making this, and it just did not mesh well. And I guess for like the smaller nitpicks, I think the scene that Leonardo DiCaprio has with the girl just goes on for just a tad too long. It's not horrible, but it's a little too long, a little slow, but I probably will watch it again. It was pretty damn interesting, and it does have more relevance than the other scenes. And I think the narration was a little sloppy, a little lazy. It was nothing horrible, but if you really wanted to have narration, it should have been more consistent throughout. Not like one piece of narration at the very beginning and then a whole bunch of narration at the end. And so after this, you're looking at it and you're like, yeah, that's a great movie no matter what. Yeah, it's some slow parts, but, nothing groundbreaking that's any bad. But then you got the third act. And let me tell you, this was absolutely astounding. Tarantino is really saving it up for this. It's just incredible. This is something you gotta see in theaters. It's one of the best of the year. Just overall, some of the most fun I've had at the theater this year. Almost every single joke is laugh out loud. Like I said that Toy Story 4 was funny, it ain't even got shit on this act alone. Almost every single joke hit and the audience was just screaming their heads off. It was just that good. And it has one of the greatest Tarantino scenes of all time. It's magnificent, and it ends on a surprisingly heartfelt note that I really didn't expect, and it's maybe my favorite shot of his ever. Quentin Tarantino, the second act of the film is much like Rick Dalton's midlife crisis because he's trying to innovate here. He's trying to do something new. He feels like he has nothing left in the tank. And then he goes to the third act and he gets a hold of himself and he goes back to what he knows but also does stuff different. And it makes for some of the most entertaining filmmaking that he has ever done. It was so awesome to see this. I can't wait to watch this again and discuss it at the end of the year, but I'm not going to spoil it here. I'm just going to give you the score for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is a very, very solid 9 out of 10. Go watch this movie. It's going to be really fun. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you all next time.